Good day, students. In this video, we're going to show you how to find the distance between any 2 points on a number plane. There we go. Okay, I've got a question mark here now. Let me just get rid of that. Okay, let's go ahead. Okay, what I'm trying to find is the distance between A with coordinates 3, 2 and B with coordinates 12, 8. And by distance, we just mean the straight line distance between the two. And it turns out that we can use something that we learned earlier in the year to help us do that. So if I draw a horizontal line and a vertical line, I can end up with a right-angled triangle. And of course, if you're looking for that side of a triangle called the hypotenuse, if you happen to know the lengths of the two legs, you can use the Pythagorean theorem to do so. So what I need to find first is the length of that side of the triangle. Now there's a couple of ways I can do this. I could just count the squares. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So therefore the length of that side is 9. But a better way to do it is to look at the x-coordinates, because that distance there is 3. That distance there is 12. That's what the x-coordinate tells us. So the difference between those two is just 12 subtract 3. And 12 subtract 3 is 9. So I found the length of the leg first by counting, which is fine, but also by just finding the difference in the x-coordinates. What about the length of this leg? Well, once again, I could count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But a better way to do it is to look at the y-coordinates. This point has a y-coordinate of 8, this one has a y-coordinate of 2, and 8 take 2 is 6. So by subtracting the y-coordinates, I can get the length of that leg. Okay, now let's go ahead and actually find the value for D. So I'm looking for the hypotenuse, so I'll put the letter C there. I like to call the shortest side A and the other leg B, and we know using those letters the Pythagorean theorem is c squared equals a squared plus b squared. So in place of C, I'm going to put the letter D, which stands for distance. The value of A is 9 units. The value of B is 6 units. Let me undo that little line. So first thing I have to do, or the next thing I have to do, is square 9, square 6, and add them together. So I'll bring up my calculator and go 9 squared plus 6 squared equals 117. So D squared is 117. To undo squaring, I take the square root. The squaring and square root cancel out, and D is square root of 117. That's the exact answer. Normally we want a decimal approximation for numbers like that, so let's round that one off to 2 decimal places. So get out my calculator, square root of my previous answer, and it's 10.816. That 6 tells us we have to round the 1 up to a 2, so 10.82. So D equals 10.82. And normally we don't put units on the distance formula because we don't have units on our coordinates. So the important thing here is we're using the Pythagorean theorem to find the distance. The other important thing is the length of this leg is the difference in the x-coordinates, and the length of that leg is the difference in the y-coordinates. And from all of that, we can actually work out a formula for finding the distance. Whoops. And here we go here. So this point here has coordinates x sub 1, y sub 1. Point B has coordinates x sub 2, y sub 2. We're looking for an expression or a formula for D. So we start by saying the length of this leg is just the difference in the x-coordinates. So that's x sub 2, take x sub 1. Difference means to subtract. For this leg, we're looking for the difference in the y coordinates. Well, that's just y sub 2 take y sub 1. So the hypotenuse, again, we'll call that the letter C. Doesn't matter which one I call A, so we'll call that one A and that one B. And let's go ahead and work out the formula for D. So we start by saying C squared equals A squared plus B squared, because we're using the Pythagorean theorem for this. Okay, in place of C, I'm going to write the letter D for distance. In place of A, I have to write the expression x sub 2 minus x sub 1 all squared. In place of B, I'm going to run out of space there, so I'll do it down here. Y sub 2 take y sub 1 all squared. So that looks a bit complicated, but it's just, that's the length of one leg squared plus the length of the other leg squared. Okay, let's now go ahead. I'm going to rewrite that in one line so we can look at it a bit easier. So x sub 2 take x sub 1 all squared plus y sub 2 take y sub 1 all squared. And finally, to find out what D is, we have to take the square root of that side, and therefore we have to take the square root of that side. And that gives us our distance formula. Distance is the square root of, in brackets, x sub 2 minus x sub 1 all squared plus, in brackets, y sub 2 minus y sub 1 all squared. And that formula can be used to find the distance between any 2 points on a number plane. So to summarize, if we've got 2 points with coordinates x1, y1, x2, y2, that's the formula for finding the distance between them. So you might want to stop the video and write that down. Let's go ahead and show you how it all works. So here I have 2 points, A 3, 6, B negative 2, 5, and I want to find the distance between those. So the first thing I have to do is decide which point is going to be x1, y1 with coordinates x1, y1, and with which point will be x2, y2. It doesn't really matter. However, if you choose the point with the bigger coordinates, if there is one, then you're going to avoid negative numbers, so it's always a good idea to try to do that if you can. So in this case, I've got 3 and a 6, so I'm going to call that one, so I make that x2, y2. I want to make x2, y2 the one with the biggest numbers. So underneath that, I just write x2, y2, and underneath this one, I write x1, y1. So I've got to basically assign a point, these 2 coordinates, and the other point, the other 2 coordinates. Now I simply write down the distance formula. Square root of x sub 2 take x sub 1 all squared plus y sub 2 take y sub 1 all squared. So always start these questions by writing down the formula. Now we just have to substitute. In place of x sub 2, I put 3. In place of x sub 1, I put negative 2. In place of y sub 2, I put 6. In place of y sub 1, I put 5. It's just a matter of writing the formula, substituting. Okay, the next step is to then simplify the expressions in the brackets. 3 subtract negative 2. Well, subtracting a negative is the same as adding a positive. So that gives me 5 squared plus 6 minus 5 is 1. So that gives me 1 squared. So I don't actually need, I don't actually need all of that. And I can now use my calculator to work out the value of that. So I'm going to go 5 squared. In fact, I can do this in my head. 5 squared is 25. 1 squared is 1. That gives me the square root of 26. So distance is the square root of 26 units. And again, if I want to get a numerical value for that, that's approximately square root 26. Oops, that was not real smart, was it? Try it again. Square root 26 and 5.099. So the 2 decimal places 5.10 or 5.1. So approximately 5.1 units. Okay, you guys go ahead now and try the same thing with this question here. You got H and I, and there's the coordinates. So turn the video off. Once you finish, come back and we'll work through it. Okay, welcome back, students. Well, let's go ahead and do the distance formula here. So I'll just give myself a bit of space. So again, I've got to decide which point is x1, y1, which point is x2, y2. In this case, it's not really going to matter too much. So I might as well just go ahead and choose that one for x1, y1. So actually write the x1, y1 underneath it. And for that one, x2, y2. So that's always the first step, is choose which point's going to be point 1 and which point's going to be point 2. The next thing you always do is write the distance formula. Square root of x sub 2 take x sub 1 all squared plus y sub 2 take y sub 1 all squared. Next step, substitute. In place of x2, I'm going to write -5. In place of x1, I'm going to write -6. So I have -5 subtract -6 all squared plus, and y2 is -4 subtract 2. So -4 subtract 2 all squared. So step 1, after you've organized which point is which, write the distance formula, substitute. Now we need to use our knowledge of integers. And -5 subtract -6, that becomes plus plus. That becomes -5 plus 6, which is just +1, all squared. And plus -4 subtract 2 is -6, in brackets, all squared. Okay, well, -6 all squared is just -6 times -6 is +36, so plus 36, and that equals square root of 37. So the exact answer for the distance between H and I is the square root of 37, and again, that's approximately equal to, using our calculator, clear what we have there, square root 37 equals, and the 2 decimal places 6.08, because that's a 2, that will stay as an 8. So D is approximately 6.08 units. Okay, so what you can do now is go and practice some of these by doing some exercises out of your textbook.